Hello, guys. Welcome. Happy Hump Day. Happy Wednesday. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. As you can see, we're going to do part two of some great comic book recommendations today. Joined by the awesome MB Geek. I will bring him on in just a minute. But before I do, let me say hi to everybody. We've got Arwen Avalon. Hello, sweetheart. Welcome. We have got Mark and Chris, the Bash Brothers. Welcome, guys. Good to see you. We've got Snortopoopas Cuba. Welcome and good morning. Darius Munchaz and hello. Good morning, love. Paris, always good to see you. Welcome. We've got Mukaba76. Welcome. Good morning. Let's see who else has joined us. Lord Buff, good morning to you. And hello to Punkwaddle. Good morning, Dave G Sound. Good to see you. Andrew46 and 2. Good to see you. And hello, Deepak Martin. Good morning. Let's see who else has joined. Project Storytime. Hello, love. Good morning to you. And Dadman Walking. Good morning. Good to see you again. William Jackson. Hello. Good morning. Let's see who else I've missed. The Geek Inside. Happy Hump Day to you too. And Dun Bunny, hello, sweetheart. Welcome. I think that's everybody. Good to see you all. Hope everyone is having a great day so far. So let me bring on my co-host for today. It is MV Geek. Hello, welcome.
Hello, pretty lady. How are you today?
Doing well, thank you. And good morning to Loki. That was a great show you guys just had. Good morning.
Good morning, boss man. Based on what you've got here is Purple, is quite a few that I think we are both familiar with. And there are some in here that I am not familiar with, but I am familiar with the title.
Oh, well, that's okay, because we were kind of chatting in the green room and we were saying the one that we were going to kick off was Fables. Now, I've only read Fables, but you've kind of delved into the extended universe of Fables as well, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Nice.
You have Fables, Jack of Fables, and Ferris.
Oops.
Various, yes.
Big hardback ones.
There are various other spin-offs that did come out too that I also have in paperback. But yeah, so yeah, I am all for talking about Fables. This was a wonderful comic book series.
It really was. It was one of those that got recommended to me because the person that recommended it, they knew I love fantasy. They thought, this is right up your alley. This is something that you'll enjoy. And they were absolutely right. I love the twist on these characters. Just to give a little bit of backstory for anyone who hasn't read it, basically what it is the Grimm fairy tales. It's the characters like Cinderella, it's Snow White, it's the Big Bad Wolf, but they're in a modern setting. And they're all in this one very small area because they're kind of cordoned off, aren't they, basically, from the rest of the world.
Yes, you have two basic areas. So what happened was they all lived in the fairy tale land, the Grimm fairy tale world. What happened was you had a nemesis come out and he just took over the world. And by the way, when you figure out who it is later on throughout the series, it is a hell of a twist. I loved it, but I'm not going to spoil it. But so they all live in New York now. They live in two parts of New York. You have two areas. You have the area in New York, which is hidden. It's right there in New York, but the mundanes can't see it. And Snow White is the mayor, whereas BB, Big Bad Wolf, he's the sheriff. Now, if you are humanoid or able to polymorphic and look human, you can live in the New York area. But if you're like the Three Little Pigs and the ones like that, you have to stay on the farm. And there is not an easy, and there is a lot of tension between the farm and main area. There's a lot of tension. It's not a happy medium.
Yes, they're kind of second-class citizens, basically, because of this limitation that they have.
Yes. So there is a lot of things there where you have, even though these people all came from certain areas, They all came to the same place. They're being treated, some are being treated like second-class citizens. You have Snow White, who really does not like BB. She does not like Big B. She really does not. She can't stand his constant smoking, which is ironic when you find out later why he's constantly chain smoking.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the fascinating things they do is the way the story works out is they're immortal. But here's the thing, they can die, but it is pointed out they can be resurrected because they are based on belief in stories. And
Mm-hmm.
because their stories get different versions told, your Grimm's, your Disney, your, whatever, Lego movie or Barbie movie, those legends are told in some way or form. And this is what maintains their immortality sense. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, the more they're believed in, the more powerful they can be, or the more power they can get. So it's very interesting. Prince Charming comes off. It's so funny because he's the ex-husband, and he's just a prick. He's just an absolute prick. But he does evolve. He does evolve. These characters do not stay one note.
Mm-hmm.
Wilhelm really stayed with this his entire run. From the beginning to the end, he closed out this series. He understood his characters. No, we are not talking Once Upon a Time. But yes, Once Upon a Time at Tin Head would be considered variations. And yes, that would continue on the mythos.
Yeah, it's a similar kind of concept, but I think Fables did it much better. Absolutely. So is this one that you kind of found accidentally, or is it one that you knew was coming? Because obviously you're a big fan because you've gone into the extended universe as well as just the main Fable storyline.
No, I was not with it when it originally started. I actually do know, this is going to sound funny, but I do remember how I got into this comic. It was around 2011, 2012, right around the time DC was doing their New 52 stuff. And and this was the point I was getting back into comics, but I wasn't liking the mainstream stuff. So I wanted to get into more independent stuff. Unfortunately, a little hard to do when there's, no comic book shops around for me to piggyback on this on. So I started hitting up chat sites and things like that before I discovered YouTube and all this stuff. Well, I ended up going in, I was getting a massage one day, and I ended up talking with this person. Some people, will do a massage and they're quiet the whole time. Me, I tend to talk with the person who's doing the massage. I know, big surprise. I'm a chatterbox. And I was talking about, I want to learn, I know there's independent comics out there. I want to learn about them and stuff. And he said, asked me a question about what I liked. And I had my things. He mentioned this series, Fables. And I said, how long has it been around? And he goes, okay. And then he sold me on it when he said, this is an actual creator-owned content. And this is when I finally started really I knew the concept back when Image came out, but it was the first time as an adult I really paid attention to what the hell that meant. That meant this person owns the IP. So I bought the first couple of trades, and I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked.
I've got to admit, I did as well. Yeah, I was recommended to do it. I picked up the first. I've gone for the omnibus editions, and I've just collected them ever since. It was one of those that, again, as you say, just hooked me from the beginning. And Tobias is destined for hell, Patrick. Hey, good to see you. He says, it's not a comic, but I've just read Born of Strife, a fantasy novel I found on Amazon, Dragons, etc. This isn't a promo, just a wholehearted recommendation for those of you who still read novels too. Absolutely. I love to read novels. It's what I do before bed. It's how it's part of my winding down, I suppose you'd say. So I've always read either a comic book or a book or something. It just helps me kind of relax at the end of the night.
Purple Valkyrie, I can tell you exactly how my grandmother used to unwind. She would go to bed reading an Alfred Hitchcock novel.
Nice.
Yes. So one of the other things too is we remember this, and I know a lot of people want to compare this comic to Once Upon a Time. and it's somewhat in some areas, but it's virtually, they are completely opposite in every way, shape, or form, other than certain grim tales and stuff. But as they do show, they do combine certain characters together. And, you get Jack of Fables.
Yes. I
And
was
he's,
going to ask also, have you played the Telltale game based on Fables? Because that was really good.
no, I don't play Telltale games.
Oh, okay, just wondered. It's definitely one that I would recommend. I started playing the ones like the Batman and the Borderlands, and then I played the one based on Fables, and it's excellent.
Well, remember this too, because it's, you look on the back here, and it's been a while since I've read these, so I have to sometimes refresh it. But remember, this is Jack. This is Jack Be Nimble, also Jack the Giant Killer. So you remember they did combine certain characters like Pied Piper and stuff, and he's just always getting himself into freaking trouble. He's mischievous. He's not worth good fortune. And it was very hilarious. Whereas, in a lot of ways, very hilarious. So is where Fables, it takes a very serious tone in a lot of areas. There's not a lot of humor involved in it, with someone like Jack showing up. This is more the humor aspect of it, kind of giving it a levity towards the situation. Like, not everybody's got their head up their ass.
And hello, Kaylee. Good to see you, sweetheart. She says, comic books are great. Never really got to read them until I had a history teacher in high school that had many in his classroom. I read them on breaks in school. Oh, that's a really, really great way to kind of get into comic books. Absolutely. And a big, big thank you to Golgo13, aka Brandon the Infinite Wolf. Hello, love. Good morning. Says I'm not versed on great comics. I have to catch this in full later. Tales from the Borderlands was epic. Later. It was. It absolutely was. I'd agree. And big thank you. Thank you, sweetheart. Appreciate that.
So, Purple Valkyrie, before I bring up Fairest, how far have you gotten into Fables?
I am up to date with the omnibus stories. That's the ones that I collect, but I haven't kind of branched out, excuse me, into the adjacent stories that came with it the way you have. As you say, Fables is a lot more kind of straight-laced. It's a lot more serious, whereas some of the other ones are a little bit more light-hearted.
Yeah, let's see. Some of the other. This was a good one.
Yes, I know that one. Yeah.
I mean, Big B was just an awesome character. Big B was just one of the best characters in there. I mean, he was just hard not to love.
He really was. He was kind of like, I know it's a pun, he's kind of like the underdog character, but he's very, very endearing. He's basically a guy just trying to do his job as well. But people do not like him because he is obviously the big bad wolf. They don't trust him.
Oh, here's one for you if you haven't seen these. These are the spinoffs. Cinderella.
See, these I haven't read, so I don't know about these. Are these ones you would recommend
Cinderella,
as well?
Yeah, in the Fables thing, Cinderella is basically a killer spy. And there's two of these Cinderella spinoffs that got made, and I have them both. I haven't read them in a while, but I mean, you look at the artwork, it's really beautiful artwork.
Yes, that's the one thing that is consistent throughout Fables. The artwork is top notch. Absolutely.
There's quite a few different spin-offs that came out, but like I said, I like how Fables ended. When I found out he was wrapping up the series at 150, Jack of Fables had already wrapped up some years prior. Fables was Fairest. Now, here's the thing about Fairest. It's predominantly the women, obviously, and the stories are more anthological. They don't necessarily follow a particular order. I'm going to be honest, it was my least favorite, but I have a feeling this was probably marketed more towards the female fans of the series. And
Hmm.
that's totally fine. I still enjoy the stories, but it really just kind of, I don't know, maybe brought the feminine side that a guy like me is just not going to understand.
Yeah, obviously it's just more of the weaker one for you in that particular series. But
Oh, yes, but I would not
the
give
fact
them
that you
up.
still read it and you've still enjoyed it does speak volumes for it, absolutely.
Well, yes, because, and I'll read them again. I'm very certain I'll read them again. That's why I pulled them out of storage and put them back on the shelf here. Since the last time we talked, I told you I was taking comic books and stuff out.
You did,
And
yeah.
so that's, like I said, those are the ones I pulled out. So when he finished out their story at the end of Fables, I thought it was very well done. It's not, and it fits with the tone of the theme.
Hmm.
There's a happily, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's ever after.
Yes. We won't spoil the ending for people, but it's
No,
definitely
no, no. But what I'm
it was a
saying is,
satisfying ending, I would say. And it is kind of refreshing to have a story that does have a beginning, a middle, and an end, which is kind of unusual nowadays. But as you say, it's because he kept control of his own IP because he knew exactly the story he wanted to tell.
and he did allow some other people to do, like the Cinderella ones are written by a different. Why are they written by? Let's see. Well, let's see. Fable's Wolf in the Heartland was done by Hamilton.
Hmm.
Greg Hamilton. Okay. Yeah, a lot of the spin-offs I think were done by. Oh, here's a good one. This one was written by. This was kind of a nice anthology. Yeah.
Yes, that one I've seen.
Overall, I'd say throughout the entire series run, whether it be Fables, Fairest, Jack of Fables, or the spin-offs, you had your hits. You had a few misses,
Hmm.
but the quality overall of the overall story was very beautiful, and in some cases, very heartbreaking.
It was. I think to agree, I think this is definitely one of the ones if anyone hasn't kind of read them or if they're just kind of getting into comics and they don't want to get into superhero comics so much, this is one that I think we would both recommend, definitely. Would you say?
Absolutely. And the best part about getting into it now, folks, is the series is over. They completed, they ended. You can start from the beginning, read it all new, and know that you're going to get to an end point, which I think is one of the biggest things.
And Project Storytime, thank you, sweetheart. It says it sent you an independent comic that I think people will get a kick out of. All right, sweetheart, I will check that one in a second. Let me bring up my second recommendation for people. So it would be, and bring it into chat, Calvin and Hobbes. So this is one that I kind of fell into randomly. I actually saw it first on Twitter because there is the official Twitter for Calvin and Hobbes, and they put all the little panels up, because they're very short stories usually. And I was kind of entranced by it. I just loved the idea of the characters. So if I can bring that up, basically what it is, it's a little boy and his stuffed tiger, and it's about the adventures they go on, and it's funny, it's philosophical, it's sad in some places. Um, it was something that really kind of grabbed me, and one that I would recommend a lot of people. And this, I've got the the huge collected edition. This is just volume 1 of 4, and it came in this huge slipcase. Um, but Calvin and Hobbes, I would definitely recommend to anybody who likes something kind of light-hearted, something kind of. It was very much like Snoopy. I thought it was that kind of comic.
It looks like a comic that and it looks familiar, but I can't say I recognize it completely. But it looks like something you would see in a comic strip newspaper.
It was. That's what it was. That's when it first came out. Yep.
That explains it then.
Yep, that's it. And obviously over the years they've got the collected editions. There's a lot of different kind of trades of them. But this, oh, and Project Storytime says, love Calvin and Hobbes. Me too. Snorter Pooper says Calvinism, exactly. And I've just seen the recommendation that's Project Storytime has sent. He says, quick recommendation. It's about Charlie Chaplin making The Great Dictator and Hitler wanting to stop it. So it is called, let me pull it up, and what I'll do is I will share the screen. If I can, let's make sure it's nothing. Okay, we can share this. Let's have a look, see what you recommend for us, sweetheart. And guys, if you've got any more recommendations in the chat as well, please throw them out. So this is the one that was recommended to us. So I've read comics kind of based on, obviously, what's happened in the 1940s. Mouse would be the one that I would recommend. If you've read that
sound
one.
like something Charlie Chaplin would do?
But this actually sounds very, very interesting. You know, I love these kind of different takes on things. So if you would recommend this one, I will definitely look into it. And big thank you for that one. And Paris is completely correct. It says the author, which is Waterston Williamson, I can't remember his name, is very protective of his IP. He only does merch for kids charities. Yeah, you will be very, very hard pressed to find any official merch for Calvin and Hobbes, because he's basically a recluse. And Dadman Walker says we had the big book of Calvin and Hobbes, always enjoyable as well. Absolutely.
One of the things I need to find that I would love to get my hands on is, and I know they're out there, I just got to get them, is some Garfield. Garfield comic strips are some of my favorites.
Absolutely. So we've got some recommendations coming in. Paris says TMNT, The Last Ronin from IDW. Nick Weiser turned me on to that. I've heard really good things about that. Mark says Astro City. That's one that's been recommended multiple times to me, so I'm looking for that at the moment. Absolutely. What about you, Jesse? What's next on your list of recommendations?
Well, you brought it up because you had it, so we might as well talk about another one I know we both know pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Saga. Absolutely. I can grab it. I've got books all over the place, guys. There it is. Yes. And we've clearly got the same.
Okay. I'm going to tell y'all right now, this is not a comic for children or for people who don't have a reasonable constitution. There's a lot in this comic that is graphic.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that's interesting about these particular comics, Purple, I don't know how much you know about the behind the scenes stuff of this. Are you familiar with how they were working this? I know a little bit.
I haven't delved too much into it. Like you, when I first started reading it, I thought, oh, yeah, interesting concept. You know, I like the characters, I like the character designs. I'm going to see where this goes. And as you say, it goes to places that you would not expect a comic to go to. Definitely very adult.
Well, I'll put it this way. I read that the way they were originally looking at doing this series is their whole intention was to put out so much content, take a break, come back and do more, take a break, come back and do more. They wanted to see if that format would work. They wanted to try and put quality over quantity of it and not feel rushed on the storyline. The other factor that is interesting in this is, how do you say his name here? Vangon or Vogan. He said he was purposely trying to make a comic that is impossible to put to film, which I would say he pretty much probably pulled that off.
Yes, I would agree. I mean, for the longest time, people said that about Sandman as well. And obviously, we're now getting the Sandman TV series.
The jury's still out on that one, though.
Yes, but for me, I definitely hope that we don't get anything other than what we've got with Saga, because I don't particularly want to see it live action, and I don't even think animation would be able to capture the feel of the stories either.
So, for those of you, what happens is you have this war between, this war that's been going on for a long time between these two races. Well, two of the soldiers, one male, one female, they betray they betray their people, they get together, they have a kid, they have a hybrid, an abomination, basically. Well, this kid gets hunted. We have these different types of bounty hunters going out there looking for him, and they are all different kinds of weird. And then you have the royal family, the TV headset guys.
Yes. It's such a weird character design, but it works.
This book is so weird that nothing in it seems weird anymore, because it's like, okay, that's weird, but I expect it.
I mean, what's the other character that's become really popular? The cat that can tell when you're lying.
Oh, the cat, liar.
Bizarre. Yeah, liar.
Liar. Oh, lying.
You try and describe it to somebody, and it just falls. Yes, people will just look at you. It's like, what are you talking about? This doesn't make any sense. It's really hard to kind of put into words, but we just have to say, just read it. And again, like,
remember the day. Yeah, this is. I'm going to be honest. This is not one that is very easy to describe. You have to read it, and it's not for everybody. I am going to flat out say this is not a comic for everybody. If you do not like this comic, I would totally understand it. This is a very select flavor of comic. Would you agree, Purple?
I would say definitely, if you can find the trade paperback and get the first trade, because the first one will give you pretty much a good kind of flavour as to what you're kind of getting into. And you can generally pick them up pretty inexpensively now. Saga isn't one of those ones where the price shot up. And there are the big omnibus editions if you love it, but I would go trade just for kind of dabbling in it.
My son loves Bone.
Yes, see, Bone I was going to bring up today, but I thought because it's such a deep story and there's so much to get into, we're going to do a completely separate show on Bone and just kind of dedicate to that.
I'll have to. I'm not familiar with Bone, but I'll have to sit back and watch it because I love getting educated on. But the biggest thing my son is into now is he's all into manga. His first entire complete book was a manga book. He read it from back to front, but you know what I'm saying.
And he loved it.
And when we go to the bookstore, he's running over. He's looking for like this #2 in this book series he's reading. I don't know if it's a 7 Deadly Sins one or one of the other ones, but he's absolutely loving these things.
It's funny you should mention that, because another one that we were going to talk about, obviously, is I can take my hand off the title.
Scott Pilgrim.
Scott Pilgrim, absolutely. So again, kind of got, you can see it, that kind of manga-looking artwork. I mean, it isn't, obviously, it's an American comic. But this one I was recommended actually by my brother. He was a big fan. He said, what, give it a go, see what you think. And he was right. I really, really enjoyed it and loved the character. I actually saw the film before I ever read any of the books. So I kind of had that in my mind as well. But Scott Pilgrim, it's a lot of fun. It's one of those, and comes in this very small size, which is kind of odd for graphic novels.
Yeah, I'm not particularly a fan of that size.
Mm-hmm. And Punk Water
But,
said, I'll admit I didn't know about Scott Pilgrim until the movie came out, but like the art style and the story, exactly, that's exactly how I felt. And Makuba76 says, I'm reading Elite and Battle Angel manga at the moment. So that's pretty cool. That one, I'm actually planning a manga and anime show coming up because this is one of the few subjects that I have pretty much no knowledge of. So it's going to be an education for me to kind of get some recommendations from everyone.
Well, that's what I'm hearing a lot, and you know what? I'd love to see that one too because
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing nothing but everything I'm hearing from the big networks is manga is killing, mainstream comics, and I'm like, okay, maybe I need to see what this is all about.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Because
That's how I feel.
well, we all keep saying or at least I keep pointing it out, we've been starving for good story, and sometimes there's been good story out there. We just didn't know about it until we start doing stuff like this and recommending things to people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let me pull up another one which I think you'll be familiar with. I can grab it. Stupidly put it under the pile. So it is Sin City.
Yes, Sin City.
Mm-hmm. Again,
what a great noir.
Great noir. Again, very adult. Some people love Frank Miller, some people don't like Frank Miller. I'm kind of on the fence with him. But Sin City, I would recommend to everybody. Such a good series. What do you think?
I love the connective tissue of all of them. I've read them all. I read them all in digital format, but I did read every one of them. I loved Yellow Bastard. I loved some.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really loved about it also as well is because it wasn't the movie, I got to read the whole comic book series from beginning to end. And it jumps timelines. It's kind of got that Pulp Fiction kind of thing going there.
Yes.
Not everything is in chronological order, but at the end of it, it still somehow all makes sense.
It does. Yes.
And it's got a very black and white light kind of drawn to it. So when something is in color, it's meant to be in color to stand out for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Yellow Bastard.
Yes, I'm just seeing if I can find an example. I don't think there's an example of it in the first book because I just grabbed the first book off the shelf. Absolutely, if they want to draw your attention to it, that's the only time you will see a splash of colour in these books. And Dadman Walking says, my oldest kid has been into manga for a long time. Some of them have been maxed into shows that I've watched along the way. Nice.
That's how my son got involved in them, was watching the manga shows on Netflix.
Mm-hmm. And hello to Mexican Iron Man. Good morning. He sends us a $10 super chat. He says, hail to the great NB Geek and hola mi amor. Manga is killing it because regular US comics cannot compete. Safe space is not the hero we need, deserve, or even stomach. I absolutely agree.
Amen. Amen, Mexican Iron Man. Oh, by the way, Mexican Iron Man. It puts the iron thong on its skin or it gets the hose again. I couldn't resist, Purple. I've been using that joke with him for a while. But yeah, he's right. I mean,
yes,
you're sitting here creating safe space. Like, I don't know sometimes when I see these people copy and retweet something and say this is real. I don't know. I take it with a grain of salt. But when you see stuff, because some of it just seems over the top, but when you see things like they're saying we want this type of person or we want this type of person, and it's based on color, sexual orientation, or things like that, and you're not doing it because you want their background in it, you're doing it just because you're hiring for that. If you hire for merit and talent, diversity will follow. If you hire for diversity, talent will not necessarily follow because you've got it backwards.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, as you and everyone else rightly pointed out, this is why manga is kicking ass of Western comics. People are turning away from the big DC, the big Marvel stories, because they don't like what's coming out of it, and that's one of the reasons why we've done these couple of shows as well, isn't it? To kind of point out that even if you're not fans of manga or anime, there are so much more out there that could be recommended. You don't even have to be into superheroes. You can fables, as we said. If you love fantasy, go fantasy. I've got a few that I would recommend for horror as well. I've got kids ones that would have been Calvin and Hobbes. We brought up Garfield. There is a whole plethora of stories out there that you can kind of fall back onto.
Yes, there is. There absolutely is. Like, for example, when we talked last time, I've told you, and I say this all the time, Sandman is my absolute all-time favorite comic.
Yep.
Favorite. I don't have it in hardback. All I have is digital. Now I'm going to collect all the hardbacks. And here's why. Because some months back, I found that Sandman was narrated on Audible by Neil Gaiman and a whole cast of people. I bought it. And I've listened
to it. It's amazing.
I've listened to like 40, 50 minutes of it, and I'm like, I got to stop. I'm like, I got to get the comic, because it is literally narration by narration going through the comic. I'm like, I want to be reading this and listening to it. I want to get that full effect. That's how great that Audible is.
Yes, and I think Rinzero agrees with you, said Sandman is a classic. Shame the TV show is going to suck. Don't want to delve too much into that, but obviously as a fan, what's your feelings on the TV show?
I don't know yet. You see, this is my thing. I don't know yet. And I'm going to put an example out here. Lucifer is nothing like the comic it's based on. And it is based on Neil Gaiman's character from Sandman that got his own comic. Most of it is completely different from, he's nowhere near the Lucifer he is in the comic. But they worked in certain elements and made it their own. They didn't try to copy, because honestly, if you tried to go with the method of Lucifer from the comic, it wouldn't have worked, because he's a very cold person. He's not this charming, debonair guy you got on the show. He's a very cold, very calculated kind of person. He's not nice, he's not subtle, and he does not care. So, that being said, but that's my perspective from that, but I still enjoy the show Lucifer for what it is. I never tried to compare it to the two. Sandman, we will wait and see. You got to remember, we're not just talking about, Dream. How is Death going to be presented? Because Death is a very important character. Yeah. Because she is very, very different from her brothers and sisters, or as he says, his sister brothers or brother sisters, however he describes them at the time. Something I try to point out to people, they're not human. They're Eternals. Their view on humanity is, Dream thinks very low of humanity. Death is really the only one who has anything real nice to ever say about them, and will say it to Morpheus quite a bit.
I think that's why that character struck such a chord with me. I think I've said it before, it was that version of Death and then Terry Pratchett's version of Death, both of them very comforting characters, which you would not expect from, basically from Death, from the Grim Reaper. I love that twist on the character.
Or I remember we brought it up the last time, the Robert Redford Death from Twilight.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and, I have read Death, The High Cost of Living, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful book. So I don't know. I think those are the two biggest characters. Dream and Death, you're really going to have to get those ones down for me to enjoy it. Destiny, Desire,
Delirium.
And we'll see how that goes. And I always got into a point. I got into an argument with someone. They were trying to say this is like, well, this was the art. I said, think about this. These are Eternals. They're ancient. The vision you see right now is just a personification that your vision can see. For all intents and purposes, every time they're seen by somebody else, they are seen completely different. their personification changes with whoever, depending on what culture of dream, what universe in dream they're talking about. And that's something I think people miss.
And I think Gore Vidal agrees. They said comics and comic film adaptations are different mediums with equally different aesthetic experiences. It's Earth 1 and Earth 2 for me. As long as the adaptation is the spirit of the original, that's fine. I would absolutely agree with that. I think most fans would. It's when they take an IP and it's, name only, they turn it into something that has no bearing on what it was based on, basically. There's no respect for the law.
And unfortunately, with a lot of the mainstream stuff now, it's become, by the way, nice chalice.
Thank you.
One of the things too now is they've run out of ideas to do with the mainstream characters, that they're trying to get these B and C list, D list characters, and then they're trying to change them up to meet their whatever checkbox stuff. And it's kind of like, I'm sorry to tell you guys this, but some people can say we're not getting into superhero fatigue. Some can say we're not. I'm just going to put it this way. This year, 19 years ago, was when Spider-Man came out. And that is really what started it. It wasn't Superman in the 70s. It wasn't Batman in the 89, 90s era. It was really when Sam Raimi's Spider-Man came out that this all really started to explode. Experiments came around. We saw them. And then the MCU came around, and that was a gamble. And it's worked for a while, but even now they know they've got to expand their formula. Hence why they're doing these mini-series. You can call them TV series if you want, but they're really mini-series.
They are, yeah. If anything's 6 episodes only, I would class it as a mini-series, absolutely.
So they're running out of things to do with these established characters. They know this. So now they're trying to strap into other characters, which is fine. But this is where we have to get into promoting these IPs and stuff. So, like, for example, I saw Jupiter's Legacy got canceled on Netflix. It's just too bad, because I thought it was okay. I thought it had potential. And I thought it was a nice from the comic. The guy who wrote it is the same guy who wrote Kick-Ass.
Yes, which is also on my pile, which I'll bring up in a minute. But let me throw you, well, I suppose you could call it a curveball and see what you think.
I never read The Mask.
Never read The Mask? Ah.
No, I actually picked it up, and I skimmed through it, and I was like, this isn't for me. And I'll be honest, I wasn't a big fan of the Jim Carrey movie anyway.
I wasn't either, and which is why when I picked the book up and read it, I was so surprised at how different it is, because The Mask is insane. Basically, you think of The Mask from the Jim Carrey film, he's a funny guy, he's a little bit mischievous, but the real Mask from the books is homicidal. He has no off button. It is the id on absolutely wild. I just like the character. I thought it was a pretty interesting take on it. And Campus said it's a lot darker, isn't it? Much, much darker. Absolutely. Much, much more violent.
Yeah,
Zero. Gave us Cameron Diaz.
That's not saying much. They gave us Cameron Diaz. That ain't saying shit. At least DT gave us Drew Barrymore.
So it's not one that you were a particular fan of, then, I take it. I thought I'd bring it up just to see what you thought of it, because it kind of splits people. Some people have heard of it; they know that that the film's based on a comic book, and some people just think of the film and don't realise that it's actual. It's a character from print.
What's the name of the comic?
It's The Mask. We're still talking about The Mask.
Oh yes, I did know it was. I did know it was originally a comic. I mean, I didn't know that originally when I heard the Jim Carrey movie, but I was still hanging out at comic book shops, and you somebody was always going to be that person who knew that information. And they were like, yeah, it's based on this comic book. We're all like, really? It kind of shocked us because we hadn't heard of it. I mean, back then, and yeah, most of our comic book news, if I don't know if you picked this up when you were at a comic book store in Britain, we pick up Wizard. That was our only source of really knowledge and news of comics.
I've heard of Wizard, but I've never picked it up. I'm pretty sure that some of the comic book stores I've been to did stock it, but usually the way I'd get recommendations would be from the staff. You'd come in and you'd be browsing, and they'd come over and say, is there anything we can help with? Is there anything we're looking for? And 9 times out of 10, if you kind of told them you were looking for, a new superhero, or if you wanted something that wasn't in the superhero genre, you wanted something horror based, they could generally point you in the right direction. And that's how I came across a lot of comics in the past.
What I would do is we would, one of us would buy we would buy a Wizard magazine because, money's tight. One of us would buy it, and then, we'd split off on who bought it each month, and then we'd all share it around with each other and other friends. And this would get us discussing, upcoming comic books and stuff. And this was the only thing we ever learned about. This was our only way to understand new independent comics that were coming out or anything of that nature. And we only had like 2 friends who were into Japanimation manga. They were the ones who introduced us to them. So, if they weren't around, we wouldn't have even probably have known much about manga back in the 90s. But that was the great thing about being a geek in the 90s is where do we hang out is, we were all accepting of each other and we all wanted to learn new geek stuff.
Exactly, yeah. The whole concept of gatekeeping wasn't a thing, and I've heard a lot of, women weren't welcome back in the day. Bull. I've never not felt welcome in any comic book store, in any convention. It's a myth, at least. Based on my experiences, if you were willing to learn, you were always welcome.
Most of the time, actually every time I ever saw a woman come into a comic book store the first time, okay, sometimes it would be, and I've done this, I've helped older people out with this. I had this person, for example, I was at Books A Million. They were trying to find a comic for their grandson, for his age group. I said, well, what's he into? What's the concept? What are you looking for? Get some feel for it. What is he like and stuff? And I actually found something for them. After they walked off, I said, okay, I found it. And I said, hey, and I explained what the comic was. I don't remember which one I grabbed him, but I said, this is very clean. It's perfect for his age. I said, it has the interest, some of the interest you were talking about. This is a volume 1. If he likes more of this, you can always get more of them. But I said, if you're looking for something, I think this is up for it. And they were very appreciative. And no time did I ever see a woman come into a comic book store and her get treated like, it's like, well, what do you like? Well, okay, maybe they don't know what they like. It's like, okay, you don't know what you like in a comic because you're not familiar with how comics work. You don't know. It's like, what are your interests? What are your themes? What are what are your interests in storytelling? You get into that and then you're like, okay, let's try this, and that was always the case. I've never seen it. So those movies where they make it like the girl come in and she's getting picked on, bullshit. Most geeks would bend over backwards to help a woman in a comic book store.
Absolutely, and Alwyn Avalon agrees with you. She said, agree completely. I've always been treated extremely well in comic book stores or conventions. Absolutely. And it's funny you should say that. You're saying that there are comics based on pretty much everything. Let's see if I can grab it. I mean, obviously, if you are a Star Trek fan, there are Deep Space Nine comics.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter what you're a fan of. I mean, I've got, for example, if you're a fan of Anne McCaffrey, there is a Dragonflight comic that came out, which I'd recommend.
One of the ones I want to get is I do want to get the Gunslinger comic book series.
Yes, that's
That
supposed to
that
be
I would
really
like.
good. Yeah.
That I do want to get my hands on. That would be another one that would be nice. But like you said, yes, there is a flavor for everything. There are DS9 comics, there are Voyager comics, there are TOS comics, TNG comics, all from different eras, all from the 80s, the 70s, the 90s. There's a crap ton of Doctor Who comics out there. I know that.
There is. Yeah.
You want to get some Doctor Who fix, you want some Doctor Who fix of your favorite doctors, you'll find your favorite doctor in a comic book somewhere.
Absolutely. And Undead Ramen, hello, sweetheart. Said, never had a bad experience in a comic book store or game shop. From the 80s on up, people love their work and they love to share their enthusiasm. People just cashing a check will be jerks. Absolutely. I agree. Generally, people that work in comic book stores, they work there because this is their passion, and as as correctly stated, they want to share it with as many people as possible.
I like what Gore Vital here said. Sandman-like saga brought non-comic readers into the medium, notably women. Growing up in the 70s, 80s, it was rare to see a girl or any woman in a comic shop because and I think a lot of ways, there was this really bad stigma. First off, there was a double-edged stigma to it. You didn't see the cool people go into the comic book store. So it was, there was this stigma. If a girl went into a comic book store, she was hanging out with the losers. This is just true. This is just the reality of it back then. I was a pen and paper RPGer for a long time. I know I've told you that in comic books, and we got picked on a lot for that stuff. So that's why a lot of us have thick skins and laugh when these little soy boys and NPCs and stuff are throwing hissy fits. It's like, oh, you're getting cyberbullied. Bitch, I got the shit kicked out of me physically. I don't want to hear it. Somebody wasn't behind a microphone yelling at Purple Valkyrie, making fun of her. They did it to her face.
Exactly. And you do kind of learn to. It just kind of washes off you eventually. But at the same time, it builds character. You learn what you love, and because you find comfort in it, you're not afraid to be a geek. You're not afraid to be a nerd, whether it be manga, whether it's Star Trek, Star Wars, comic books. You love these things because it's what makes you happy.
Now, Purple Valkyrie, if I'm not mistaken, and I know we're talking about mostly what here, but you're into the horror comics, aren't you?
I am
indeed. You have a particular flavor for horror movies.
Yeah, I've actually got one here. Funny you should mention that. So that's the Chuck Dixon collected Nightmare on Elm Street comics.
I didn't know there was a comic of Freddy.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna have to look for that. The ones I want to get is one of my personal favorites. I want to get the comics that had Pumpkinhead.
Oh yes.
Because I love the original movie Pumpkinhead.
Pumpkinhead is such a forgotten comic horror monster. People just don't remember him, that he exists. But that's awesome. But I have got the individual Nightmare on Elm Street ones, and I've even got some of the ones from the 80s as well. And I've also got the novels back there as well that were released.
What? How were they? How were those novels? I'm curious because that would be interesting. Did they get the hairs going or anything?
They were really good. I mean, some of them are a little bit hit and miss. Some of them are better than others. If I could reach one down, I think they've actually been pushed to the back. What I'll do is I'll take a picture of them and I'll send them to you after in a DM, just and kind of give you a breakdown. But I would definitely recommend them. They're not easy to find because a lot of them are out of print now. But if you could find the omnibus edition, I would definitely recommend that one.
Also, other genres for you folks. Yeah, I believe that. But other genres too, folks. You can find Terminator comics, Ash versus Evil Dead type comics.
I've got that as well.
Predator comics, Alien comics, and you don't have to worry about the continuity of it. You can just pick one up, read it, have some fun. Heck, I think there's even a comic with a Terminator, a Predator, and Ash.
There is, yep, and there's also what would have been the Freddy versus Jason versus Ash film, which never got made, but did actually get made into a comic book, which I'd also recommend if you can find it.
I think that one is still pretty easy to find. That's
It
still a
is,
newer
yeah.
one.
Yeah, that one's not too bad. I think there's only 6 issues as well. It's just a collected story, so it's pretty easy to find for quite cheap. But I would recommend those as well. Another one that I was going to pull up since we're kind of clipping along.
Kick-Ass.
Kick-Ass, yeah.
I've read all of those and Hit Girl.
I'm just going to ask, which do you prefer? Do you prefer Kick-Ass or do you prefer Hit Girl as the main protagonist?
Hit Girl. I'm going to be honest, Hit Girl.
I do too. Yeah, same.
I loved Hit Girl.
I even like the film.
Huh?
I even like the film. Yeah, I thought the film was really well done. But that, unlike Scott Pilgrim, I actually read the Kick-Ass the book long before I ever saw the film.
So for those of you who don't know, here's the funny thing about Kick-Ass. It is literally what you really think would happen. Some idiot becomes a superhero. It is really fun. It is a good story. But yeah, Kick-Ass is he's the bumbling superhero. Hit Girl is just the badass. But she's not a Mary Sue. She is absolutely written properly. You understand her story. It's just really good. And I love the ending of Kick-Ass 3, how it all works out at the end.
Yes. No spoilers, but it really does come to a really satisfying conclusion, which is kind of refreshing because I was reading it, I was thinking, oh, are they going to fumble it at the end? And I was so relieved that they didn't, that you actually got a satisfying ending.
Yeah, I think how both characters, how we see the ending with both characters is perfect for the way their characters ended. It was just very nice. It was a nice way to end. I love having Hit Girl as a little intercruel, just because I love watching her in prison, just because she's just insane.
She is. And I love that time after time people underestimate her because she's so tiny. She is a great character, but like you say, she is not a Mary Sue. She is just really, really well written. And Camphor says Kick-Ass only became a badass after he got hit by the car.
Yeah, that was true.
And Faris, hey sweetheart, he says purple. I'm gonna stay on Clubbing Times doing a book about Bronze Age comic book ads. Nice. The ads in the old comics are so entertaining. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that is a great idea for the old advertisements versus the evolution. Yeah, I think we've all seen some of those that we'd laugh at. That actually sounds like a great topic. That's a wonderful topic to go on.
It really is.
I don't know who came up with that, but that's genius.
And Mark says, let's not forget League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Purple Valkyrie. Not the movie. No, not the movie. But the comic, another great read. Absolutely. Frank Miller, sorry. God. Don't have my head. Alan Moore. One of his best. And again, one that's more adult than you'd expect if the only thing that you've seen is the film. I actually hate that film because it killed Sean Connery's career.
Oh, really? I would have thought that was the Avengers that did that.
It could have been the Avengers, and then League of Extraordinary Gentlemen put the final nail in the coffin. But yeah, it was sad.
Well, speaking of Alan Moore, here's a question for you. I know we haven't discussed this one, but we can bring this up for maybe a part 3 one time. What do you think? Which did you prefer, V the comic or V the movie?
I'm going to say V the comic, but it's very close for me. I thought the movie was actually really well done. Love the cast. The bits that were cut out I thought made sense. And I loved the spectacle of it. I thought it was one of those ones that was a really, really good, faithful adaptation of an excellent book.
I agree. I give the book just slight nods ahead of it, but not by much.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt the changes were fine.
Same, yeah. A lot of people say that about Watchmen as well. Say Watchmen had a much bigger deviation from the comic to the film, especially the ending.
End, really.
Yeah, only the ending. But I'd still say it's a solid film. Mm-hmm.
Oh, we'll have to talk about those two one of these days. But damn, those two could be that'd be a whole hour.
Yes, it could. That's a pretty good subject, actually. Comic book versus film comparisons. See which one got the closest. That would be a pretty good topic to do.
Watchmen and V would be very high up there.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree. And I would actually add Kick-Ass to that list as well, because I thought that was pretty well done.
Now then you want to take movies that didn't go anywhere near their adaptation. Wanted.
Yes. I've got one more that I'm going to recommend to you guys, which is a little bit off center. It's a bit of a weird one, but I really enjoyed it. It is Carthago. So this is about marine biologists. They come across what's basically megalodon, and it's their story of what the hell do you do now that you've discovered this giant fish that somebody's actually trying to capture and put in a aquarium. Now, why you'd want a megalodon in an aquarium, don't ask. But that's how the story unravels.
Well, that's a different one. That is definitely one I've never heard of.
I really enjoyed it, and Go Vidal seems to like it as well. Dead Man Walking, not to be confused with Sharknado, right? Absolutely nothing to do with Sharknado, and nothing to do with that film that came out a couple of years ago, Meg, which was just pretty awful.
Also, everyone, any of these recommendations you've seen here, you can, if you can't make it to a comic book shop or you don't feel comfortable, buying a full thing off of Amazon, there are places like Comixology where you can just get yourself a couple of digitals, try out one. If not, okay, you're out a few bucks, but you don't have to worry about doing anything with the comic. Comixology is also a good place to go. And there are places like that if you don't feel you want the physical media. It's understandable. Not everyone wants the physical media to everything. So it is an option for you to have. You can put it on your tablet, take it anywhere to go. I know we harp a lot about physical media right now because of cancel culture, but don't take that off the table if it's something that is going to give you an opportunity to explore something new that might pique your interest.
I'd agree with that, absolutely. And especially a lot of the very first editions, they're reduced in price to kind of get people enticed. So it's something that you can kind of dabble in for, it's not very expensive as well.
And sometimes they have free comic book, free digital comics. They do that to promote certain things, and they do have discounts and stuff. So it gives you an opportunity to explore a few things. You might find something there that we never even touched on that just grabs your attention. You get through the preview, you enjoy it. Maybe you find yourself a new comic. And like I said, you can always get the physicals later.
Absolutely. It's a really good way, as you say, to kind of test the water, I suppose, kind of dabble in, especially if it's something that isn't quite so mainstream. So that is a brilliant suggestion. Well, thank you. Oh my gosh. MB Geek, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me again today. We're going to have to do a part 3.
Oh, absolutely. There was a couple here that we didn't even get to talking about. And I know there's a few. I mean, we got a whole list. I mean, this is a fun series. Second time we've done this, folks. If you haven't seen the first one, go back and watch the first one too. We talked about a lot of different comic books in that one too. So share it out there. Entice your friends to check it out. Get your juices flowing. Get your ideas going. You know, see what you like, find it, and just consume it. Because we're telling you, there is some comic out there for you. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your religion, your background, anything. There's a comic out there for you. I
Well
promise.
said. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. Jesse, tell everybody where they can find you and what you've got coming up next.
All right, folks, you can find me at NB Geeks. Let's talk. I mostly right now I am uploading content. I'm giving reviews on things in under 10 minutes. I've got my Mortal Kombat review coming out in a couple of days. I have my review of Zombieland Double Tap versus Army of the Dead, and this is kind of how I started out. One is a fantastic satirical movie that does not take itself seriously with characters you love and enjoy, humor and heart. The other is Army of the Dead.
I've actually put off watching that, so I think I'll watch your review first before I go watch Army of the Dead.
So what I've been doing is, and as Purple Valkyrie knows, I just recently got my intro, my overhead, my overlay, and my outro all set up in a really beautiful way. I'm very proud of it. And I'm now getting into the point where I've got so many topics. I laid them all out, and I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I'm doing it my way. And my way is I don't need to go into details too much. I'm going to give my feelings. I'm going to try to articulate it as best I can, give a solid review. I'm not going to go into too much detail of it. And I'm going to give my thoughts, and I'm going to try and keep them under 10 minutes. Perfect.
And you're getting a lot of love from the chat. They clearly think that that's a fantastic idea. And guys, MVB Geek has worked so hard on his channel. I can't wait to see the content coming from it.
And something I'm going to throw in, Purple Valkyrie, that I really thought about doing, especially since we've been talking about comic books and stuff. I think I'm going to start somewhere along the line, if this keeps going as well as it's going and I'm still excited with it, I'm going to start doing comic and book reviews. Just giving little extra scripts to, you know, some books we might read. Or, you know, for example, I'll just go over 5-10 minutes of the Dresden Files. I don't have to go into each individual book, but I can go into the content of the main storyline.
Just give an overview.
Yes. Yeah. Those are the kind of things, that's the kind of stuff I'm looking to do.
That sounds awesome.
So far, I've popped out 5 of them. I got 2 coming out this week. I'm going to, after this, I'm going to go get some lunch. I got about 3 other ones I want to work on today, at least 2. And I'm just so excited to be back into doing this again. It's really been refreshing the last few days to finally, after the move and everything, it's been refreshing to be back into this. I'm really having fun. You've
clearly got the creative juices flowing again, and I cannot wait to see what comes out. So massive, massive thank you for joining me today, guys. Huge thank you to everyone in the chat. You guys were on fire as always. Thank you everyone for your super chats. Really appreciate it. As MB Geek says, he's got much more content coming out, so please sub to him. You will not regret it. I will be back Friday, and we'll also be back later on this evening with Loki. We've got a game stream, so looking forward to that. Massive thank you guys for joining us. I hope you had fun. I know we did, and I can't wait to do part 3. So huge thank you, MB Geek. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Bye guys. Take care.